I'm sure you've probably got a few questions. What we'd like to do at the end is we're going to run a panel for the last part of the session where we've got a few questions that have been preempted, but we'd like to obviously make sure that people in the audience get a chance to ask some questions to any of the panellists or the presenters today, as well as anything you want to ask Charles, because Chuck's, that experience that he has is just absolutely, second to none. I can guarantee you that there's not many people in this room who can talk about some of the things you've just heard there today. I know there's one other, and he's probably he's our last presenter today. Probably not going to go into much detail as what Chuck did though as well. I just wanted to reiterate a couple of things. These events are difficult to organise. Getting all of these people to come and try and give something different that you haven't heard before. We're going to be serving breakfast in a minute. I wanted to just make note that Phil's presentation is going to go as we serve breakfast. So there will be a little bit of disruption. That's nothing new for our business and our lifestyles. But please, if there's anything you want to hear again or you didn't quite get, raise your hand and let us know, because this is your opportunity to hear about something that's completely different that you've never seen before. And it's unique to this room. The first time it's been released in Australia. So please take the opportunity to listen and enjoy your breakfast. Without that, I'll hand over to you.
Morning, everybody. Got to say, every time I hear Chuck speak and tell those stories, I'm just in awe. You think about the little stresses and strains in our life. Imagine being in that room with the guy with the shotgun under that. Wow. There is a video in it. I have to apologise for my voice. I've got a little bottle of water here. I've been living in planes and hotels for most of this year, and just got back from Singapore. A bit croaky. I think it's a pretty fair bet that everybody in this room appreciates the huge amount of money that's been invested in encryption technology, firewalls, threat detection, threat prevention, etc., etc. But the data breaches just keep happening. And the reason for that is that it's still way too easy for hackers and cyber terrorists to simply circumvent the thick walls of data encryption and simply walk in the front door by stealing the key. That key is identity theft. My name is Philip Cuff. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Token One. We're an authentication security software company proudly based right here in Sydney. We've been pretty much in stealth mode for the last 3 years, and we're looking forward to a very exciting 2017 with our friends from Cloud Distribution. I'm delighted to put this event on today. Our focus is the prevention of cybercrime and cyber terrorism, and specifically highly trusted access to very sensitive data and corporate systems for government, critical infrastructure, corporate, organisations of any size. This is a very important aspect for us. We feel that our technology, passionately, is profoundly important and of the national interest. I certainly presented that in the United States, talking about why Token One is in the national interest. Just a name drop for a minute, that presentation that the guys were talking about that I did at the Pentagon City just recently. The speaker after me was the ex-CIO of the CIA. General Michael Hayden spoke as well. He's the only man that's ever held the position of director of both the NSA and CIA. It was an extraordinary high-level event. It was humbling, actually. It was really, really cool. But for somebody from here to stand up and tell the Americans, but we've got an answer for you, it was, but be careful. That was good fun. We think we set a new benchmark, a new standard for authentication security. And what I want to try and cover in the next 20 or 30 minutes or so is not only why that's the case. Of course, I need to talk to you a little bit about our company and our technology, but I do want to hark back constantly to what Chuck was talking about, and the reason, other than those great stories of his, why he was referring to some of the old principles. It's not just that they're still relevant, they're extremely relevant. And in many ways, a lot of people get overwhelmed by the cybersecurity problem. It is very complex. Again, talking of humbling, or actually terrifying, hearing people like Michael Hayden explaining it is overwhelming, it is desperately complex, makes you stop and think, well, hang on a minute, I was hoping you'd have all the answers. It is a very complex, very big issue. And so remembering key principles of security is actually very helpful, and certainly what we've attempted to do. So this is the point where normally in my presentation I would talk about one-time pad principles, and in particular ask people in the audience what is a one-time pad and if there's anybody that's actually used it. Just in case, is there anybody in this audience that might just be, yep, Marcus? Anybody else that's actually used a one-time pad in the field, as it were? Yeah. Oh, several. Good, thank you. Half the hands in the room went up in the DC event. Kind of put you on notice. Obviously, Chuck. But the key point with the one-time pad principles that we've adopted for authentication of users, not for secure messaging, I just want to dwell on for a moment. Because there's been actually, whether you're aware or not, a number of secure messaging apps that claim to be uncrackable, unbreakable, impenetrable, and frankly they're not. And we've adopted the principles coming from secure messaging to create what we consider to be an uncrackable authentication, user authentication technology. But do not confuse crackable with unhackable. Anything is hackable. If I give you my phone and my token 1 PIN, which I'll explain in a little while, if I give it to you or you hold a gun to my head, it's hacked. The secrets are out. But the key principle with an uncrackable system is that there's no way to find a cipher and a crypt that will let you into the whole system to be able to reveal all messages and, in the future. Come back to that point in a little while. So here's a big scary number. There's always got to be a big scary number. Hey, it's a big number though. And this next slide, it's marketing material. This has a certain amount of salesman's poetic license in it. I'm just going to talk through this though for a minute, just for context. Just so you can try and see where we are positioned, what type of company we are, what our technology is attempting to do. So the poetic license, the salesman's poetic license is the x-axis. We've merged together convenience, cost, simplicity. This was always a very challenging piece of marketing material for us, where we want to try and compare our technology to other technologies, and it was always felt like comparing apples with oranges. So the point of this slide is essentially that there is a benchmark at the moment. Very few people in this room, I suspect, would have used that benchmark that we refer to as PIN entry tokens. Come back to that again. Starting with passwords. Okay, we're all fed up with passwords. I will talk about that a fair bit today. Too many of them, can't remember them. We know they're not really that secure. That isn't actually the fundamental problem of passwords. If I can convey one thing today that isn't just about token one, that is a general point, it's what's the real problem with passwords. Because secrets are here to stay. You read any of the media coming out of Silicon Valley, they're so in love with biometrics, which is fantastic. But it sometimes appears to me as though people think that we're not going to have secrets in the future that we have to remember. That's absolutely inevitable. They're here to stay. The problem is the password model itself is broken. Then obviously, I think most of us would be familiar with different versions of software and hardware tokens. Specifically, hardware tokens, I'm talking about the RSAs or the Vasco tokens, where the number changes roughly every 60 seconds, driven by an algorithm. Battery power token. everybody in this room familiar with what I'm referring to, more or less, and the software versions that run on your smartphone, for better or worse. These things have improved the situation with passwords dramatically. There's no doubt in that. A couple of points about them, though, that may or may not ever have occurred to you. A hardware token, it doesn't prove you did anything. All it does is prove that somebody had that token. The second factor in the authentication equation there is your password, the secret that you enter that links to you. Just stop and think about that for a minute, not from a security point of view only, but from a compliance and regulatory chain of evidence point of view. Non-repudiation, proving in a court of law that you did it. I would like to emphasise that I often refer to compliance and that sort of thing as the sort of ugly twin sister of security, and we've got some people in the security industry here in their black t-shirts and masks and so on. No, that's nice and sexy, but compliance, records management, that sort of thing, vital. The Privacy Act, finally we're starting, been waiting for 15, 16 years to see the privacy legislation here being beefed up and actually having some clout. Then obviously the biggest poetic license on this slide is biometrics. Broad range, different types of biometrics, good and bad, and a very moving target. We've already started working and integrating voice biometrics into our stack for really high three-factor authentication in spook world land. I've certain very interesting conversations in Washington DC about that. And primarily, by the way, for account management. So the user can self-change their token 1 PIN number as securely as the standard authentication. But not, what's your mother's maiden name, pet dog, or worse, having it emailed to you. Okay? But it was only a week ago, I think it was, 2 weeks ago. Our CTO, Camille, where are you? If you're still in the room. Yep, over in the corner there, gentleman with the beard waiting. If anybody wants to talk to somebody that really knows about what we do, that's the guy. It shows me this YouTube video, if any of you have seen it, of Adobe, I think it was, who have released a technology where you record a conversation, whether you're participating or not, your voice is just recorded, and they're then able to literally copy and paste text from the text conversion of that voice file and replay something you didn't say. Now, okay, that's clever and cool, but we've got, oh shit, what about the implications for voice biometrics? Is that going to trip up these systems or not? We're in the process of starting to look at testing that, so hold that thought. But biometrics are not a secret. That's the really key principle behind that point. That, my fingerprint, it's not a secret, and neither is the data that is converted from that or retained from that. They are invaluable, but there is a reason that we have principles which will come on to later of authentication, 3 factors, something you have, something you know, something you are. And 2-factor or 3-factor authentication is not 2 biometrics or 3 secrets. It has to be one of each. Finally, on this slide, the benchmark I was referring to. Who here has used what it's a term we've coined, PIN entry tokens. I don't know whether there is actually a term for it. Little calculator device. Usually, I can't think of many other deployments I'm aware of anyway, other than high net wealth internet banking. So those people putting their hands up, make sure they pay this one, because they're usually the wealthy guys. But for those of you that aren't familiar, this is where you have an offline battery-powered token. But unlike the early version of the token, the number is generated for you by an algorithm every 60 seconds and is time-synced back to a server. The PIN entry token is offline, battery-powered. You put your PIN into the little calculator device, and your one-time code that you're going to use comes up on the little LCD screen. I've got one at home from 10 years ago from UBS Bank, about that big. Put a smart card in it. It really is a big calculator. Now they're quite neat now, getting close to credit card size, maybe even smaller in some cases. Here's one from DBS Bank, and where you can see who it is. It's DBS Bank in Singapore. This is pretty small. They really work and they're really secure. And like token 1, you don't enter your secret. You don't enter your PIN or transmit it over the internet or mobile or reveal it to anybody. It's actually stored, however, hashed and encrypted, but that is a subtle difference with our technology. But you never enter your secret. What we've done is to achieve that exact same level of security, but move the paradigm to a much more simple, much more convenient, and obviously lower cost solution, because it's software driven only. All you need is your smartphone, or as you'll see later, even in a slightly varied implementation, even old feature phones, old legacy flip phones. Not a core market for us, and certainly not in Australia. Africa, 50% of users in that market still have non-smartphones. And as a result, we do believe we can claim we've created a new standard, we've set a new benchmark for very high levels of security that organisations of any size, anywhere, can deploy rapidly indeed. That's definitely a question to ask Mel about is, okay, what sort of change management, how easy is this to deploy? And you'll be very pleasantly surprised by that. Now, I'm conscious that you're eating at the moment. This demo should be pretty much the fastest demo you've ever seen. In fact, I've had to slow it down. 45 seconds. We do a live demo with you. We've done in about 6 seconds. Great genius of this technology is how simple it is. It's deceptively simple. I've had the best reaction usually is, huh? That it? Depending where you're sitting, you may or may not be able to see all the letters and numbers on the screen that comes up in a minute. I will run this back at the end of the presentation, time permitting, and if not, certainly we can do that outside afterwards and just show you again if you like. But, and I can step back and replay the presentation or the canned video. But blink and you'll miss it. So what I'm doing in this demo is having the Token 1 app, the one-time pad that Chuck was talking about, is basically shrunk down as a little very dumb app on a smartphone in this demo. And instead of having a small number of pages or cipher keys, or what we refer to as key maps, there's 10,000 of them preloaded into your phone at registration. And that's a lot of authentication attempts. In principle though, one-time pad, you only use it once. So if you're attempting to authenticate, you make a typo, you make a mistake or whatever, the organisation you're trying to access, in this case it's trying to log into my Office 365 service, it might give me 3 goes or 5 goes, standard business rules there. But you will find that key map, that cipher key that appears on my phone in a moment, will be replaced. You'll only get one attempt with each key map. Never repeated. Briefly, because we've got an IT audience here, every key map that appears has a serial number. And that's how we ensure that it's only used once, and also how we can avoid the need for algorithms and complex time syncing, which has both security and management convenience. So here we go. Now what's happening here is that obviously you notice the password's already been saved, bad security, but very, very standard. And what appears on the screen of my phone is this key map or key of letters and numbers. Now, for those of you who can't see, there's the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0. My PIN number for this demo is 1230. So I'm going to enter GVCJ and click submit. That's it. End of demo. I will just backtrack that this morning. The point is that the letters that appear next to each number will only appear once. Next time the letters will be different. This is a repeat of the same demo, but next time I go to authenticate, the letters will be different. And all I'm doing here, I'm not clicking on my phone, by the way. I'm simply looking at my phone and the image that appears on it as a guide, as a reference point to enable me to encipher my secret, my PIN, in a different way every time I authenticate. I hope that makes sense. Let's say when it's finished, I'll run through 2 or 3 different scenarios and make a couple of others as well. So fundamentally, this is what we're about. At the highest level of all, we are in the space, in the business of giving all of us a secret that we can retain in here, in our memory, never enter, never reveal, never transmit. And interestingly, this is a more recent patent that we lodged in 2013, never store that PIN anywhere either, except in the user's memory. That, we believe, is genuinely unique and profound. And trust me, when I got to this point in my presentation in DC, that was a bit nerve-wracking because I was just waiting for somebody to go, actually, it's tough, excuse me, but looking good. We've already had good feedback from the European Patent Office that no objections already. That's very, very early stage. So this is the summary of what I mentioned earlier, the 3 core pillars of authentication security that we have. You know, something to love. My humble opinion, that's here to stay for a long, long time. There's a lot of other technology that is, again, invaluable, and we integrate some of this technology for real-time location services, for example. Where are you physically? Are you in the office? Are you in the building, in the country? There's self-monitoring of what we're doing on the internet now, based around mouse clicks or just tracking your phone. Whatever you do, don't think there's any anonymity on the internet anymore. I found that out a few years ago with just looking at somebody's website. The next day that company was able to tell me who I was, what device I was using, where I live, how many email addresses I had, and all I'd done is literally click on their website, on their homepage, left, you know, was there 30 seconds, didn't enter any details, they just knew exactly who I was. We're, as I say, in the space of something you know, and setting a new standard for the knowledge factor in authentication security. So, up to this point, question earlier, what's the real problem with passwords? Got too many, to write them down, find ways of remembering, reuse them. We all know that's what goes on, and we all know in here, in our gut, that they're not very secure. That's the real problem. You actually have to tell somebody what your password is by entering it, by doing this, to prove that you know it. It sounds so obvious, but nobody ever thinks of it that way because there isn't any other reality. There's no other concept of us being able to prove that we know our password, certainly not that we're familiar with. That's the fundamental point. You want to keep a secret? We all know. Don't tell anybody. Again, the way we do it, keep the PIN in here, keep the secret in here, and it empowers the user. This is the prelude to probably PR marketing from Token One in 2018, 2019. At the moment, our focus is very heavily on B2B, employees, enterprise, large or small organisations, but not really consumer and retail yet. But one day, I'm really looking forward to talking to a large audience and saying, we empower users to protect their own identity and their own secret. That's quite profound, I think. So, benefits. Proves user presence. Now, this is the compliance point I was getting at earlier. Of course, it's vital to keep the bad guys out, and we do that, I think, very successfully. But so many hacks, I don't have the stat off the top of my head right now, but so many hacks and fraudulent issues happening from the inside. It's vital to keep the bad guys out, but it's also vital to be able to prove what authorized users did. Did they really have the permission to do that? Should they have done this? Should they have accessed this information? And to be able to do so in the court of law. There is no precedent yet in the court of law about Token One. We will get to that, I hope, one day. But no, Your Honour, still did it. It was him. He can't deny it. And the reason for that is that I'm part of the authentication moment. It's not an algorithm creating that one-time alpha key that I enter. My PIN stays in here, and infinitesimally, quickly in my brain, I convert the numbers to letters. I do actually have to think, which is where marketing people get a bit challenged. Oh, we can't get people to think. We've never had anybody use token 1 once that can't use it instantly the second time. If you're using a computer and you're on the internet, you can use token 1. But you'll be the judge of that. The point is the user is part of the process, not an algorithm. And that's totally different. So, non-repudiation, chain of evidence. Any of you in this room that deal with the board, director of risk, compliance, should really take notice of this. It's a crucial aspect of the case. I think it was last year, the first director ever went to jail in Hong Kong. Wasn't complicit, wasn't part of the data breach. The data breach was just so bad that they locked him up for a while. As I said before, there's no time-sinking algorithm that we depend on. And that again is crucial from a security point of view this time. There isn't anything to crack, per se. I can't remember how many times the RSA algorithm has been cracked since the 90s, I think at least 3, with disastrous consequences of tokens having to be revoked. And next point, who here feels they have a concept of what federated identity is?
I know there's more than that, Bill, but just holding that.
Yeah, I would expect probably half the audience at least, I would think. Essentially, I'm me, one identity, one person, multiple persona, multiple accounts. I'm not just talking about single sign-on, which colleagues from one login will talk a fair bit about later, I'm sure, but across multiple accounts and organisations. The key point here, and we're not pushing this very hard, so again, at the moment, so again, this is a prelude for the future, but the point here is, if nobody can work out what your PIN is, and only the user, not even the organisation I'm accessing, by the way, then, well, I can safely reuse my PIN because nobody will know what it is, or even if I'm reusing it. We're not pushing that message very hard at the moment because we've all been told over and over again, don't reuse your password. But that is an important aspect and certainly something internally that we're talking to various organisations about. Consumer can come later. This slide, though, I do want to talk about all channels. Now, at the moment, obviously, our core focus is internet and mobile authentication. In a second, I'll talk to you about the old feature phones, just to show you something we're working on. Just for interest, it's not released yet. But this slide is actually more about the left-hand side. I don't know about anybody here. I am sick to death of looking like an idiot in the supermarket or the bank doing this. You know, putting your hand over your finger when you're entering a PIN code in. Again, keeping secret. We are not targeting these places on the left immediately. Excuse me. But who's had a phone call from a bank, for example, you're walking down the street, oh hi, this is XYZ Bank, we need to talk to Mr. Cuff, please can you do an identity check? Now if they ring me, they get an earful, and I usually ask to speak to a supervisor, I say, look, and it usually is the bank. I don't think I've ever been wronged by anybody that's turned out not to be the bank. But I think, you know, you've heard of phishing scams on the internet. You're training your users up to be susceptible to somebody ringing you from wherever, claiming to be the bank. You've got to stop doing this, and I think that is starting to reduce now. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to confirm your identity over the phone or radio in the field, emergency services, call centre, by telling somebody a facsimile of your secret, your PIN, but telling them the encoded PIN, the alpha letters, AFGH, instead of your 1, 2, 3, 4 PIN. And the purpose of that, and the point of that, is that I can then prove to the person on the other end of the phone that it's me, but without enabling them to impersonate me later. Give you another example. CIOs in this room will probably appreciate this point. I won't point to him. One of the people that works for us, Ben, is in this room. He still knows the passwords of his last employer, his CEO and CFO. They've revoked his privileges, but, oh, Ben, I've got a board meeting, here's my laptop, please can you just fix this, my password is. We all know that happens. How bad is that? Different scenario. Hey Ben, I'm brushing in the boardroom, enter AFGH. Yeah? You can do that by phone. You ring him up and say, look, my laptop's on the desk, get in AFGH. Or get into my internet banking site, ring your wife, etc. To authorise a transaction without breaching your internet banking contract, by the way, because you're not actually revealing your PIN number, your code. I promised to talk just briefly about the SMS example. I'm not sure how many people in this room this will be totally relevant for, so I'll be fairly brief, but it's just out of interest. When I was in DC in July, earlier this year, there was a lot of publicity around NIST, which is the standards body in the United States, saying that stop using the SMS channel for authentication. What I'm talking about there, I'm pretty sure everybody would be familiar, getting usually a 6-digit code SMS to you, one-time code that you then enter into your web browser on your phone or your desktop or whatever. This isn't new, actually. NIST has been saying it for a long time. It just really hit the press around the world, hit mainstream media here, actually. But that channel, SMS, has never been designed to be a secure channel, and it isn't. And we can't fix that, and we don't attempt to. What we can do, though, is make the insecurity of the cell phone and the insecurity of the SMS channel, make that irrelevant. Here's a mock-up example. You receive an SMS with this text message. It's not the secret. This is the keynote. It's a version of the keynote. See it on the smartphone earlier. So if my PIN number in this example was 1230, I'm going to enter AJLG on my laptop, my desktop, over the phone, wherever it may be that I'm responding. Obviously not into the old feature phone, the flip phone, because it's not a smartphone. That works. Trivial. We've done a prototype of that already. I'm not sure whether we'll be rolling that out. Probably need a telco in Africa to put their hand up and say, oh yeah, I want to license that. But it's not the future, but it's there just to make that point that what we're really doing here again is keeping secrets secret. Last slide. Some use cases there, but really there's myriad. It's endless. Our total, venture capitalists ask me this all the time, our total theoretical addressable market is everybody on the planet that has a password to access anything that's really sensitive or private or confidential. At the moment, we're not focusing on consumer, so really the addressable market for us is every employee that does the same thing. But I would like to draw your attention to a couple of use cases on here. Privileged access management, come up a lot recently. A smaller number of users, but vital market, really important. And critical infrastructure. I find it absolutely terrifying in the United States just how bad the situation is. It's not good here, but think of this. After my presentation in DC, we immediately got invited to the National Cybersecurity Center of Excellence just outside of DC in Rockville. Classic American bunker style building, great facility. Every room they've got probably a dozen labs, and in every lab they're trying to solve two industry problems: collaboration between government, private sector, usually with something like Amazon or Microsoft sponsoring it, etc. Very, very cool center. The very first use case I was shown, the problem they're trying to work on, is in the energy sector. This is all public information, so it's in the energy sector where contractors working on power buildings, power sites, dotted all around a state, let alone all around the country, may have dozens, literally, of proximity cards to gain access to the facility. On average, it takes over 90 days after an employee has been terminated to be able to revoke their access to all of those facilities. Somebody told me a story yesterday that, just to put that in perspective, there was a CIO sacked in the United States not long ago. Sorry, tell me the story if I'm getting it not exactly correct, but they deliberately flew that person from one city to another because they know that the CIO carried an unlicensed gun. So they deliberately put him on a plane to another city, knowing that that gun would not be able to travel with him before sacking him. When you have to deal with that sort of thinking, imagine having all those ex-workers, power utility type workers, wandering around that may have been very unhappy about being let go, having access to the power station. So privileged access management, critical infrastructure generally, but records, information security. We're not actually focused on the payment space per se. Very happy to license our technology that anybody wants to run in, take on MasterCard, Visa and so on. We're in the information security business and specifically user authentication. So that's the last slide of the presentation. Obviously I would like to take any questions, but while I'm doing so, I thought what I might do is just let that demo and 2 or 3 others run through. Particularly for anybody that didn't see quite what was happening. Look, most of the clicking of the plates is finished. You're welcome to stand up and just make sure you can see if you want to. I'll play that while anybody wants to ask me any questions. Just before I do though, these demos, there's now 3 different ones. You'll find same PIN number, 1230 in every demo, but they're accessing totally different systems. This is the federated identity point that I was trying to get at earlier. Any questions anybody wants to ask?
We might save them for the end, too.
Good.